Hello, class. Catching Dreams is over, and it's time for your summative written response. Remember, this is an important grade. Summative grades are 70% of your total grades. So, reviewing first, in this cycle, you learned for content, you learned the characteristics of birth and infancy. The age range is from 0 when you were born to around 2 years old, and you are totally dependent upon your parents or your primary caregivers. Children of the age 0 to 2 cannot survive on their own. And we talked about infant mortality or death rate in the 1800s. And we looked at 3 ethnic groups. African Americans had the greatest chance of having their infants survive, and that was because of having a natural medicines that they knew how to create and use, and having a matrilineal culture. Native Americans had a medium death rate. They also had the natural medicinal knowledges, but they also were undergoing genocide at the time, which resulted in an overall population decline and a higher death rate for women and children. Anglo-Americans, or white people, had the greatest death rate, and this was due to fashion and wearing corsets, hospitals and doctors who did not know about hand washing, and overall disease, especially in the city areas. We talked about what a dream was and how they have physical effects on your body. You need to dream every night or your body does not do what it's supposed to do, and you end up getting sick and eventually dying. We talked about the Native American beliefs about dreams, how they are gateways to the spirit world, where spirits and ancestors can come and tell you things, give you advice, but this isn't always meaning that it is a good spirit or good advice. You learned the story of the dream catcher, 2 versions, both grandmother spider and with the trickster spider. You viewed life on reservations, both in the past when Native Americans were relocated to reservations during Western expansion, and then contemporary life on reservations. You went and viewed the protocol for visiting the Navajo or Diné reservation and what you can and can't do there as a visitor. And then you investigated some important Native American leaders. So the context that you learned about, you learned what indigenous people are. They're people that are native to an area. You learned who Native Americans are, which is a broad term that can cover North America, Central America, and South America, all the way from the North Pole down to the tip of South America. Though the term Native American itself is primarily used in the United States. We focused on the lifestyle of Native Americans in the Great Plains during 1850 to 1900. They were nomadic hunter-gatherers. They followed the herds, and they used the buffalo was the keystone species for the environment and for Native Americans. Most of the things that they used came from the buffalo. They lived in teepees, which are portable housing. Teepees now are mainly just used for ceremonies. And then during the time of Western expansion, we talked about the reasons for Western expansion, including things like the gold rush and the Homestead Act, which was giving free land, building of the Transcontinental Railroad, different kinds of things that drew people out to the West, like after the Civil War was over and people were relocating from the South. And then immigration coming over from Europe during the time period. The cities were really piling up with people and had a lot of disease, so people were attracted to moving out to different locations. The effect of Western expansion on Native Americans was the increased genocide through the destroying of their way of life, their culture, and outright war and massacres, taking them away from their homelands and relocating them onto government reservations. We talked about the importance of the buffalo, and then some modern things, the Indian Art and Craft Act, which is preventing replicas of Native American arts and crafts to be sold as originals, and that helps to protect Indian artists and the income of the reservations and tribals. We talked about MMIW and the Dreamcatcher Foundation, the huge issue of the missing and murdered Indigenous women in the United States and Canada, and how the Dreamcatcher Foundation was created by professional athletes in order to help provide support and investigation and information. For the studio section, you learned what the traditional materials were for making the Dreamcatcher, the vines and sinew and mostly natural type beads and glass beads, and then the feathers and the different meanings of the feathers. You learned the meanings of everything, what the netting is, what the hoop means, what the feathers mean, what the beads are. You used modern materials for making a Dreamcatcher. You used a weaving process that is called netting. It's where you use one strand to weave with. And then you created a Dreamcatcher following the Lakota Sioux tradition. So your format for your summative writing, use a Google Doc, use the default font size and spacing, write one paragraph per prompt. So you have a total of 4 paragraphs, okay? Not 4 sentences, 4 paragraphs. Remember, paragraphs have 5 plus sentences. The basic structure is you have a topic sentence, 3 supporting sentences, and either a conclusion or a transition. All your writing must be original. I run the originality checker. If you have flagged passages, that results in a grade of 0. I was kind the first time with the origami and let people redo work. I am going to be less kind about it because it's something that you should not do. Remember to do the spell and grammar check on your work. If you turn it on in your Google Doc, they are underlined and you just click through and fix it. You can write, as always, in either English or Spanish, the language of your choice. Okay, so your prompts. For each of these, you are writing 1 paragraph. Paragraph number 1 deals with content. Explain how Native Americans use Dreamcatchers. Include the legend and why they were especially important for babies. So for this, I'm asking you to tell me what a Dreamcatcher is, what is the story of a Dreamcatcher, why was it especially important to have Dreamcatchers to protect babies spiritually. Paragraph number 2, context. Describe the Native American lifestyle that we studied on the Great Plains from the time period of 1850 to 1900 and how that was changed by Western expansion. I'm asking you to tell me how the Native Americans lived during that time period. What did they do? What was important to them? And how was that impacted by people moving west, the settlers, the army, and the like? What happened to them? Number 3 is relevance. Choose one of these 2 topics. Either write about the Dreamcatcher Foundation or write about the Indian Art and Craft Act. Tell me what it is, why it is important, and how it relates to dream catchers. Okay? So you're choosing one of those two things, and you're telling me what it is, why is it important, in other words, what does it do, and how does that connect to dream catchers. And then for your fourth paragraph, is your studio. You're evaluating your work. What was the most challenging part of the studio project, or the hardest part for you? And what was your strongest part? Explain what each part of your dream catcher means. Okay? So, again, 4 paragraphs. First one is on content. Second one is context. Third one is relevance. And the fourth one is studio. If you have questions, let me know right away. Okay? All right, let's do a good job. This is the last thing, the Dreamcatcher work. All of that has got to be done by Friday, March 12th. The end of the 9 weeks is the 16th of March. That's when I have to turn in my grades. So all of your work needs to be completed by the end of the day, March 12th.